All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Today is our follow-up webinar on the 8 colors of fitness. For those of you that may have joined us last week, we did a dive into how the 8 colors came to life, what the colors are, and a little bit more of how they interplay with keeping people motivated to exercise. And so what we heard last week and what we want to carry over this week is do a little bit of a deeper dive into the individual colors and how they work and how we can make it the best use of them. So you've got your blues, your golds, green, red, white, purple, saffron, and silvers. So let's go ahead and get started. So with the 8 colors of fitness, in each of the colors, there are 5 factors that go into bringing that color to life and for an individual to really maximize the benefit of being that color. So once you know what your color is and you've taken the quiz, and if you haven't, in our mobile app under daily classes, as you found this information, you can go ahead and click there to take the quiz or at the 8colorsoffitness.com. So you learn what motivates you, what the approach that color should take, what keeps that color focused, the environment that is best for that particular color, and interpersonal connections, being around people and what that does to motivate or demotivate you. So let's go ahead and talk about some things related to each of the colors and why do those colors exercise. And this is, when you look at the 5 factors, what we're talking about is what is the motivation behind each of those colors. One of the things that we learned when we, our coaches were trained on the 8 colors of fitness with Suzanne Baru, who is the developer of this, the majority of our population is made up of blues and golds. And so in learning about what makes people tick, one of the things that we learned is the majority of our folks that we tend to see are blues and golds. So I'm going to start there. So when we think about blues and golds, you can see here that for blues, it's really keeping commitments to ourselves. So if I'm a blue, Lori, who's with us, she's also a blue. We tend to be internal and we can set goals and work towards achieving those goals. And that's what really motivates us. And being very clear on what those goals are is something that really helps to motivate us. For our goals, and later on in the conversation, I'll talk about how these colors are similar to each other on the color wheel. But for our goals, they're similar, but they like to share their accomplishments. And so they like to talk about the goals that they're going to set, whereas your blues are more internal motivation. And goals like to share if they ran a race or they completed a milestone, they like to really share and be acknowledged for those accomplishments. And those are considered motivators for them. So for a white, whites are, we like to think of them as a blank canvas. So a lot of times our whites are very inside their own thoughts in their heads. And so when they exercise, they like to use that as time to reflect and to think and accomplish what they set out to do. So for them, we tend to find them in quieter spaces or outdoors, going for runs. We see a lot of runners who are also whites because it gets them outdoors and they can think as they're doing and participating in that exercise. And for your purples, purples, they do enjoy physical activities. They tend to have a little bit more of a structure, but they like to set out what they accomplish to do. So I'm going to give you an example. I remember we were working with one of our group exercise coordinators who was a purple. And she said, you know, I knew that I was going to go for a walk today, and my husband wanted to join me, and my walk was going to be my workout. So I knew that I had to exercise at a certain pace, and I knew that I needed to get some intensity in there. And he just wanted to be more casual and just talk and talk and talk. And that was disruptive to the purple because they had set that time to do that activity. When something disrupts that, it's really challenging for them. But their main motivation is staying in shape and taking care of themselves because that creates balance in their lives. So then on the bottom half, so the colors I just went through on the top, those are considered, again, your job types. And then on the bottom half are your play types. And so for greens, they get a lot of energy from being outdoors. It's not that we never see them indoors, they get really energized by being outdoors and really being one with nature, and they're internal motivators. They can be competitive with themselves, whereas the counterpart, the red, is also energized by being outdoors, but also they're really focused on competition with others, whether it's a playful competition or inside when they're a lot of times we'll see, and we'll talk to runners who might be on a treadmill, and whether the person knows it or not next to them, they're actually competing with that person inside their head. So it really needs to be joyful and playful for them. They are, a lot of times we'll see our reds are former athletes who like to try and get back to the way they used to be in their earlier years when they were competitive athletes. So you've got your saffrons. Your saffrons it's reducing internal stress and boosting energy. We like to think of a lot of our saffrons enjoy our yoga classes because they find that pleasure in that finding peace and balance and harmony. And they really are, they kind of bounce around into different things. Whatever that calls them to do that day is kind of what they do. And then your silvers, they respond to really liking things to change up. They're social. They find pleasure in just different experiences. They don't like it to be mundane, but we also like to think of your silvers are the ones that are going to disguise exercise. That has to be some purpose, some fun to it. You can't just say that they're going to go out and just complete exercise for the sheer fact of completing exercise. So for us at the Y, what we learned is our traditional approach was applying this concept of everyone comes in who is new, and if you're new, we're going to go ahead and get you started. We're going to teach you how to use a cardio equipment. We're going to run you through a strength circuit. And when you start applying the color philosophy to this, that was probably counterintuitive to so many colors. Doing that for a silver, it was very much a demotivator, and they were never going to stick with that. So let's talk about approach preferences, okay? So you got your color wheel here. Again, you got your jobs and your play types. But let's talk about what the job types are. So your job, their approach to it is they prefer to plan, make sure it's scheduled. They like to classify in categories. We want to make sure that it's measurable, whether we're measuring with our Garmin, our Apple Watch. We have an app that we're using. We like to take things step by step, and we're pretty consistent in how we do things. So when we alter those things for us, it can be challenging and throw us off our game and routine. But on the flip side, you've got your play types, which are spontaneous, ready for action, staying open, playful, easy access, and fun. So what we like to think, and especially our saffron, is that they have a bag packed in their car, ready to go at any moment. We had a healthy living director at one point who was a saffron. And when we were doing some interviews on saffrons, and we discovered that he was one, we said, tell us a little bit about what it's like to be spontaneous. And he said, well, I went and visited the Simmons Y one day and thought, oh, I feel like I'm going to go for a swim. So I had my bag packed, and so I just, grabbed my bag and went for a swim. And all of those that were surrounding him who were more job types were really like, how did you make that happen? Like, that has to be so planned out for us. You needed a towel, you needed a swimsuit. There's so many things that you need to consider. And he was just happened to be by a branch one day, and I decided I wanted to go for a swim. So that's how the spontaneity really comes to life in some of those colors. All right, let's get this one. There we go. So approach by color. We talked a lot about the blues and the golds. Again, we're planning is really the utmost important factor. For your white and your purples, and again, as you're looking at this and you know your color, go ahead and take a moment to read what it talks about in terms of your approach. One thing to know is because you've taken that quiz and that is your color, it doesn't mean that you're actually doing what is most advantageous for that color. And so I always use this example. My brother is a red, and he is a former athlete. And so growing up, all he ever knew was what he was told to do. So as you know, through sports, they train kids to, you're going to do this exercise and we're going to do it when, and you have a coach that's pushing you along to do it. So they never really learned how to do things on their own. And so for him, he every single year he's always struggled with his weight. He can yo-yo left and right with that. And so one of the things that I've noticed as a red, what he was doing was in the beginning of every year, as we know, New Year's resolutioners do, he would come into the Y and he would bring in his headphones and he would get on an elliptical or a treadmill, and he would do that for probably about 30 minutes. And if you guys were here, I would ask you the question of how long do you think that lasted for? He probably did that for maybe a month or two before he got bored. Because if you read about the Reds, that is the exact opposite of an approach that they probably want to take. Being unplanned, being around people, making it fun, that's what Reds need. The flip side, my husband is also red and I'm a blue. And so we also have to be mindful of how colors interact with each other. And so before I knew he was a red, before I understood that I was a blue, when we would go take classes together, he would frustrate me because he was always trying to one-up me. He was always trying to push me and say I didn't count right. And I was so frustrated by him. I didn't even want to exercise with him. When we started getting into the colors and then realizing what each other's were, that's when I understood why he was doing what he was doing. And so instead of taking it as a dig on me, that was his way of making exercise fun. So now we have fun with them. So what engages the mind? Also important when we're thinking about how we exercise. So I'm going to switch down to your greens and your reds and your saffrons and your silvers. Again, greens are outdoors, so they are pretty really one with nature. They can really do and explore and push themselves to however they need. There are hikers, our mountain bikers. They just love being outdoors, and that in turn gets them and their brains focused just on being outside, and that they don't really use the term exercise or fitness. This is just a part of life. This is just what we do. And for your reds, it's it's that internal competitiveness. It's responding to the activities and the actions that are happening in the place. And it helps them to relieve boredom. I was explaining that my husband likes to dig, and he was always playful with everyone who we would go take a class. And that's what Reds do. Or if they are out doing something, training for a race, having that energetic music is really important for them. Same thing for the saffrons and the silvers. It's listening to the music while they're being active, having a challenge or a goal to focus on, but it's the distraction so that they don't feel like they're exercising. It's something that keeps their focus away from actually exercising. For all of the top half, which are our job types, we're okay with focus. We're okay with focusing on proper technique and making sure that what I'm doing in my form is correct. Whereas again, when you're flipped down to the playful side, they're not doing stuff thinking about form. They're listening to music, they're looking at the environment, and that's how it changes from your job types to your play types. So I always love this category of environment and where people thrive most. So there are some that are able to transfer outside and inside, and some within their environment indoors. It's interesting how they show up. So I'm going to start with a white. So again, you may not be one of these colors, but you may know someone or have a family member that you're interested in having them take the quiz. I really highly encourage you. So people who are whites, I'm going to give you a scenario. So whites are, again, they're calm, peaceful in their own thoughts. So when they're exercising, it's chaotic, noisy is not a place where they enjoy being. And so when we are working with whites, we tend to want to pay attention to, like if you're in a fitness center, our natural tendency is to take people to show them where people are and where energy is so that they get excited by that. Whites are actually the opposite. They want a calming environment to go to within the fitness center. So the down times of the day are actually a better place for them to be. They don't need to have necessarily peaceful music and that yoga type philosophy. It's more about just the noise and the clutter and the people and the loudness. It's like they want their quiet space to get their work done. It's the same thing when being outside. They can go for runs, and it's just, again, it's a way for them to get into their own inner thoughts. And so being outdoors is also a place where we see them. So for our blues and our golds, we can tend to interchange in between indoors and outdoors. It's really more about making sure that we've set the goals, that we've planned ahead of time. And then what I've discovered is, because I'm a blue harmony, I tend to do better in group exercise classes because I like to be around people. I like to engage with people. I like to, I don't want it to distract from my exercise, but it's just so fulfilling to be around people that are doing the same thing, getting motivated by the same thing. Whereas if they're more of a efficient, then those are the ones that we tend to see go into the fitness centers, put their earbuds on, don't bother me, I'm getting my stuff done, it's my checklist, and they're okay doing that. It doesn't mean that you wouldn't find a blue efficient in a group exercise class. It just means how they show up in that class looks different. And Lori, I know being the blue efficient as a group exercise leader, you can definitely speak to that one.
Absolutely. It's so funny listening to these, these different points, because I am so very blue, but that is the one thing. But I think that it's where I enjoy taking a variety of classes, but I never have enjoyed the, hey, let's team up and let two people work on this one thing together. I like to be in the group atmosphere, but I need to work by myself. If we have to share or touch hands in the middle, I'm out.
Yes. So you can start to see that, whereas these used to be things that you would say, well, that person's not very friendly, or when we would go in the fitness center and we would train our fitness staff, make sure you're going up and saying hi to everyone. And if they have their earbuds on, don't ignore them. Like, really try and talk to them. Well, that's once we started learning more about the colors, we realized that's not what those folks want. And so being appreciative of those. So again, our greens, reds, saffrons, and silvers. The greens and the reds love outdoors. It's not to say that saffrons and silvers don't. And it says here, obviously, saffrons are outdoors in natural surroundings and fresh air. They're all love being outdoors. But again, how they show up in those spaces, in terms of greens being internally motivated, can go out and do it on their own. Reds love being outdoors, but they're sports. They love being outside. They love playing with people and being very action, and where the energy is what reds tend to thrive in. With saffrons, you notice it says fitness centers with a casual atmosphere and dress code. Casual and convenient is really probably a good label for a saffron. You don't get too many rules and policies and things to a saffron, because that's just going to be a deterrent for them. We like to think, when we're thinking about doing a tour with one of the colors for our gold or our job types, we like to think about making sure that they walk away with a schedule, they understand times, they understand how to access certain things, what might be guidelines or rules in place, because that helps them to understand and build their framework. On the bottom side, those folks, it's more about, what's the environment going to be like? Who are the people you're going to be surrounded by? When are the peak times and when are the down times? What's the music like when you go into those spaces? Because those are different things that really motivate or demotivate those who fall into that play type. And lastly, your interpersonal connections. So again, these are with people, without people. And so it really, with Suzanne, when she was training us, she said they intentionally designed the logos or the icons, the reds and the silvers, because reds and silvers thrive of being around people, for it to be a fun, engaging environment. And so that's why they developed those colors that way. So again, if you are in that color category and you find yourself always doing things individually, and you find that you struggle and you're constantly on and off the wagon, that would be an example of pay attention to that, because really it's getting yourself surrounded by people who are like-minded and can really help you maximize your talents by that color. So the other piece to the interpersonal connections is also, again, your harmonies versus your efficients. Harmonies, really, it's people, and efficients, it's that checklist and get stuff done. So I know we're running short on time, so I have a few more things I wanted to make sure we got to today, and then we'll see if there's any questions that you guys may have. So I'm just going to give this up here for a few seconds. So barriers, again, when you think about yourself, think about when you experienced a time, whether it's now or whether it's in the past, where you struggled to make exercise a consistent part of your lifestyle. And again, notice that I'm using the word exercise because I'm a blue, and that is something that I do. I use that word, and it's important that it fits in my lifestyle. But for those who might be on the play side of it, the greens and the saffrons, it's more about activity. It's more about your daily routine or your daily activities that bring health benefits to you as an individual. So when you read these, find your color, understand what the things that are listed as your barriers, and then you start to work on things to overcome those barriers. So I had done an interview one time with a blue who was particularly blue harmony, and she was really struggling to get back to exercise. She used to do it, and when we talked about it, what was happening for her was she used to schedule activity, but then kind of got away from it. And so that was something that it was causing disruption to her, and so she just needed to get back to figuring out how to do that. For the red, again, using the example of my brother who would go into the fitness center and just get on an elliptical or a treadmill and bore himself to death for 30 minutes. He actually found enjoyment going to a group exercise class. He was doing an athletic conditioning class where he felt like he could be challenged and he could make friends, and he started getting to know people, and that just became a really fun environment for him. So know your barriers and then overcome those. So last couple of things, there is a lot of similarities. The color wheel is there for a reason, because there's what we call partners on the wheel. So your blues and golds, you may take the quiz and one day it's a blue and the next day it's a gold, because there's a lot of overlapping tendencies between the blues and the golds. But the difference between them is golds tend to like recognition and be recognized for their accomplishments. Blues, it doesn't matter. As long as we've done it for ourselves, we're okay with that. Whites and purples, again, very similar, whereas the whites prefer more of being by themselves, peaceful settings. Purples actually enjoy having people in the environment, but not necessarily interacting with them directly. So that's a little bit of the difference between the whites and the purples. Our greens and reds, again, for them, they are both competitive beings, but greens are internally motivated and reds are more external motivators. So your greens, again, they can set a goal for themselves and go out and accomplish it, and they like to be outdoors in nature. Our cyclists, our bikers, our hikers, whereas reds are competitive with others. Saffrons and silvers, spontaneous and opportunistic, both of them are very, very convenient is really important. They can get distracted. We always joke and say for silvers, don't let them get into the locker rooms for too long, because they can get distracted and miss something. I used to have a coworker who was a silver, and they went to take a yoga class that day, didn't have yoga pants. They went out to buy them and then got stuck because they enjoyed shopping. So they kept doing that instead of going to the yoga class.
I remember that.
So making sure that they don't get distracted is really important for them. So with the last few minutes, I just wanted to see if anyone has any questions, and if not questions, maybe topics that it makes you think of that you would enjoy hearing us talk a little bit more about.
Yes, and as we give this a second for the comments to come through, if there are any out there, just remember that if you are not joining us live, you can comment after the fact if you're watching this later, and add those comments in, and we will absolutely gear our topics towards what you guys are looking for. So additional information on staying motivated through exercise, nutrition, cooking tips, we are ready for it. On our Thursday webinar, China and Amy are working on their third part of their Healthy Habits series. But after that, we will continue on with our Tuesday, Thursday webinars based on the feedback that you guys have. So whether it's feedback now or it's feedback later, we will definitely take that to heart, and we will gear towards what you guys are looking for. All right, with that, I think we are a wrap. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, whether you're tuning in live or you're tuning in later. And we look forward to seeing you guys again next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Have a great day, guys.